Imagine living in a country that would take its own law-abiding citizens, remove them from their homes, force them to surrender everything they knew, give up the jobs they had, and be forced to live in a camp created by the government simply because the government feared them. It sounds like something that might happen in a third world dictatorship or some sort of communist country halfway around the world. But guess again. This is something that happened here in the United States during the 1940s after the attack at Pearl Harbor. The government was fearful that Japanese American citizens might collaborate with Japanese who were fighting in the Pacific. In order to deal with this, the government stripped them from the coast and moved them far inland and kept them in camps for years. Farewell to Manzanar, written by Jeannie Watsuki Houston and James D. Houston, follows the life of Jeannie Watsuki, a 7-year-old, and her family as they are torn apart by the policies of the U.S. government. Jeannie's father winds up being arrested in the very beginning of the story and spends 9 months in prison, accused of collaborating with the Japanese. Ultimately, those charges are determined to be false, and he returns to his family, who has since been relocated in Manzanar. However, he comes back a broken man. We find out through Jeannie's narration all the details about life in Manzanar, the good things, the bad things, and the way that it impacted her and her family's life for years to come, even after they left Manzanar. Farewell to Manzanar is written for a teen audience. It is a nonfiction work that describes particular events in American history. And now an excerpt from Farewell to Manzanar. At 7, I was too young to be insulted. The camp worked on me in a much different way. I wasn't aware of this at the time, of course. No one was, except maybe Mama, and there was little she could have done to change what happened. It began in the mess hall. Before Manzanar, mealtime had always been the center of our family scene. In camp and afterward, I would often recall with deep yearning the old round wooden table in our dining room in Ocean Park, the biggest piece of furniture we owned, large enough to seat 12 or 13 of us at once. A tall row of elegant lathe-turned spindles separated this table from our kitchen, allowing talk to pass from one room to another. Dinners were always noisy, and there were always abundant, with great pots of boiled rice, platters of homegrown vegetables, and fish Papa had caught. He would sit at the head of the table, with Mama next to him, serving, and the rest of us arranged around the edges according to age, down to where Keo and I sat, so far away from our parents, it seemed at the time. We had our own enclosed nook inside this world. The grown-ups would be talking down at their end, while we two played our secret games, making eyes at each other when Papa gave the order to begin to eat, racing with chopsticks to scrape the last grain of rice from our rice bowls, eyeing Papa to see if he had noticed who won. Now, in the mess halls, after a few weeks had passed, we stopped eating as a family. Mama tried to hold us together for a while, but it was hopeless. Granny was too feeble to walk across the block 3 times a day, especially during heavy weather, so May brought food to her in the barracks. My older brothers and sisters, meanwhile, began eating with their friends, or eating somewhere blocks away in the hope of finding better food. Younger boys like Ray would make a game of seeing how many meal halls they could hit in one meal period. Keo and I were too young to run around, but often we would eat in gangs with other kids while the grown-ups sat at another table. I confess I enjoyed this part of it at the time. We all did. A couple of years after the camps opened, sociologists studying the life noticed what had happened to the families. They made some recommendations, and edicts went out to that families must start eating together. And until the mess hall system itself could be changed, though, not much could really be done. It was too late. My own family, after 3 years of mess hall living, collapsed as an integrated unit. Whatever dignity or feeling of filial strength we may have known before December 1941 was lost, and we did not recover it until many years after the war. Not until after Papa died and we began to come together, trying to fill the vacuum his passing left in all of our lives. The closing of the camps in the fall of 1945 only aggravated what had begun inside. Papa had no money then and could not get work. Half of our family had already moved to the East Coast where jobs had opened up for them. The rest of us were relocated into a former defense workers' housing project in Long Beach. In that small apartment, there was never enough room for all of us to sit down for a meal. We ate in shifts, and I yearned all the more for our huge round table in Ocean Park.